This is where I'm going to be doing the appraisal fair today. Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go. People are starting to show up. It is about officially time to start, so I'm going to go into the appraisal. This is the first appraisal fair I've gotten to do in a long time. It's fun to be hired out to do these sorts of things because I get to meet a lot of people and give them a verbal fair market evaluation. And what that means is we're going to take a look and give our best educated guess as to what they have and what the fair market value in this area would be for those items.
I think I got it from my husband's great uncle.
Oh, okay, very nice.
Yeah, the frame's nice.
The frame is really nice. The frame has just a little damage, but you know, these are easy to restore if you wanted someone, or if you wanted to do it yourself. Honestly, what they do, they take silly putty and they make a little mold and they put plaster of Paris in and then cut, paste, and paint it over. So that's not going to affect the value much. This type of frame was very popular around 1895 to about 1910, and that seems like it'd be about current with the picture itself. Yes, Julian Alden Weir. He is a listed artist, so he is somebody who's considered to have some import. And let me see if we can get a recent auction price for you. There's actually one coming up for sale as well, and it's a similar size. It will sell in 6 days, will be the auction. They are estimating that it will sell between $2,000 and $2,500, and they're starting it at $1,200. It's nice nowadays. It used to be we had to wing all of this, and now we can actually get some information while we're sitting here. It looks like their piece, which sold several years before, sold for $1,750. So you're somewhere in the high 1,000 to low 2,000 range if you were going to do for fair market value. If you were going to do an insurance on this, I would say insure it for the top end of their estimate, at least $2,500. Insurance values are always higher because if you have to settle your claim, they don't want you to have to look for 10 years to find a better deal. They just want you to be happy. This fellow has a kris, or similar type of dagger, from Southeast Asia, primarily found in Indonesia and associated islands, and it's worth about $200 now. Well, tell me about this handsome bear and how you got him.
Here, I bought at a farmer's market over in Madison, Indiana.
Really? Oh, I love Madison, yeah.
I used to live there, and then I was visiting, and they had a farmer's market. I just thought he was interesting and unusual for his size.
He is. The size is different, and I like the clothing. Do you mind me asking what you gave for him? $12. Well, first of all, you did great. He's this sort of curly mohair, and then the eyes, they appear to be glass. I was thinking they might be plastic, but they're glass. In the late 50s, early 60s, they switch over to the plastic eyes. So this one's probably early 50s, or maybe even a little older. I like the vest. Now, I want to talk about the vest because I believe the vest is 100 years older than the bear. It's terrific. A lot of people who are teddy bear fans like to dress them. And whoever had this, maybe this was a family piece. This would have been part of when little boys turned 3 back in the Victorian era. They would put them in their first pants. Up until then, they were dressed just like girls, no difference. And so they would put them in pants, and they would always have a little vest with a muslin back that didn't have anything on it, and then the pattern would be on the front because it cost a lot of money to get printed fabric back then. So they would use as little as possible just for the part that showed. This piece is probably 1830s to 1860s, looking at the pattern and the colors and the way it's made. And the bear is 1940s or 50s. So I'm going to give you 2 different values because you really are looking at 2 different things. And he's mid 20th century because the early 20th century they had a long snout, and the arms usually are a little longer in proportion. His arms are longer, but the snout is shorter, so it's kind of a transition towards modern bears. And you know, he's played with, but he's not worn out. He's probably worth about $35 to $50 by himself. The vest itself is worth about $50 on its own. So you really have about a $100 piece for your $12 investment.
Yeah, awesome.
One thing that's fun at an appraisal fair is to find out how people got the pieces and what they know about them or what they found out, because sometimes they have lots of good information and sometimes we're debunking myths. In this case, he had looked up some good information, but he was looking at the Egyptian design, which is a little more valuable than this one. But this is still a nice early Singer portable machine from about 1910 and should value right around $100.
I got this from my old doctor, and penicillin just came out.
It looks horrible, but it is supposed to be comedic, obviously, and I love it. The artist is Hoffman, and it's been printed. It's a serigraph, copyright by Ducher, Paris. This one's going up for auction in 2 weeks in the Netherlands. They've already had a bid, so it will sell, and they're expecting it to sell somewhere in the range of 120 euros, which is about 150 to 200 American. And for this sort of work, that seems about right, because it is a plate that made it rather than him doing it originally. So I think that's probably a realistic estimate.
This lady has an interesting set of platters that came from her mother, and even though the shapes are all the same, they have different companies' decorator marks on the back, and that's because companies would buy the blanks and then decorate them themselves. So she has a set of 10, but they're all different because they were done in different places. That doesn't mean the value is necessarily different, though. In this case, all of these sell for about $15 to $18 a piece.
I'm not usually this fussy, but since it's paper, I'm going to do the white glove treatment here, because I would like to look at the interior. What's great about this one, and I think the reason that it's a little more expensive, is because Peter Arno is a pretty respected artist from that time, a animator. And the fact that it has him doing the circus drawings gives this a cross collectability. So it's not just circus people, it's also people who like animation. And there's one of his right there. The value on this is somewhere currently they seem to be selling, in this condition, it's got a few little rips, it's not perfect. They seem to be selling for between $40 and $50 for just this particular one, which is pretty good, because usually we see prices more like, you know, $15 and $20 on a lot of these. What'd you give for it? $2. That's great. Well, you did well. I do an online channel, and there's an appraiser on there who always says, well, I hope you offered less. And I think, it was $2. You got a great deal. Be happy. I'll give you my card. I even make house calls if you have a bunch. Yeah, I do get calls from people who have collections they bought at the top of the market that aren't there anymore, and that's always, I feel like, the Grim Reaper. Everything still sells. It just sells for what it sells for now.
This guy had an interesting situation. He has collected a very interesting grouping of photographs that appear to be various members of the James Gang. The problem is that these have been widely faked and forged, and he knew it and I knew it, and the big question is whether these are authentic. They look good, so I referred him to a museum that may have a docent able to help him, because he really needs an authenticator rather than an appraiser in this case.
My grandmother she kept buttons in it, like a miniature cigar.
They were cigarillos, yeah.
There's actually a label on the inside.
Ah, very good. 5 for a quarter, yep. Yeah, and in between, there was another one called Between the Acts. It was basically a small cigar that during intermission at a show, you could go out and smoke real quick, just enough, and then throw it away because it was small. That's why it got the name. It's cute. This is probably 1920s. Anything tobacco tin related is pretty collectible. Now, in-betweens were very popular, so it's not a super rare one. Rare ones in great condition can be, oh gosh, hundreds of dollars sometimes. We usually see these priced around $30, $35 is kind of a typical range. And we're just so lucky that a whole lot of people's grandmas put their buttons and things and save these things. I go into garages and Dad put his, you know, screws and stuff in them, and as long as he didn't write screws across the top of it, we're like, hey, this is great.
This next young viewer and his family came with a bunch of interesting collectibles. It was so neat to meet them. I'm always enthused when I see people getting into this young like I did. He had a very valuable Pokemon card, $15, the one on the right. Some Pokemon cards are thousands now, so it just shows you all generations collect. And then his mom had a very pretty Art Deco bracelet that had been in the family for a while.
They were purchased by a hospital that I used to work for, and they were put out, they were cleaning out their storeroom, and they were going to throw this big folder of things away, and I asked if I could have them, and they said yes.
Oh, that's great.
And I've had them for decades.
So you saved them from the trash, and that was a wonderful thing to do because they're so interesting and they're important, and they're also pretty collectible now, so you did yourself a big favor.
Yeah. And there's also the pages that show the contents of the book.
Oh, so you have the whole thing. Okay. Chirurgie is surgery in French, of course. Yes.
I did look that up.
What's really interesting about these is not just the fact that they're 1870s approximately, not just that they are French copper plate engravings, and you can see the pressing, you can see the indentation there. But the other thing is that honestly, your timing for these is really good because there is this whole area of collectability called oddities.
There's a few that are really pretty kind of...
They're pretty gristly, and to be honest, they're more valuable because of it. There are people taking these old images because they're not copyrighted anymore and making t-shirts out of them and making a bunch of money selling the t-shirts. So there's a whole bunch of different people collecting this now. It used to be that these sold to doctors and that was it, but not anymore. And it's very detailed. It actually is amazing because there were so many advances in surgery at that time too. So yeah, it's a great collection. You say there's 38 total.
38.
And you
plus the contents pages.
Table of contents, plus you've got the front piece you said as well. There's your contents. So you really have the whole book, and that's what makes me think that you had asked if I wanted to sell these, what I would do. And at first, looking into it, I thought, well, and you had talked about you'd looked at First Dibs and seen a price, and First Dibs is usually on the high side of things because of who their clientele is, and it might not be a price that a regular person could get. But in this case, I think because you've got the front piece and everything, I think the collection maybe should stay together, and I have a couple of recommendations. Sold individually by the piece, again, it depends where you're selling. If you've got the First Dibs clientele, they're usually going to discount back 15 or 20% from those prices, and they're selling to a particular type of customer. If you're selling on eBay, they seem to be selling for $150 to $175 per sheet. The collection effect is, I've got the whole thing with the cover, with the contents. That may send it into a higher cumulative value because if you figure, let's conservatively use the eBay values. Well, you've got 38 pages and there are, let's say, 150 a piece. Well, that's like close to $5,000 if you sell them out. The big question is, will they sell for more as a group than $5,000 or less as a group? And I think to find the answer of that, my recommendation to you is going to be to speak with probably Heritage Auctions in Dallas or possibly the auction house in Cincinnati and ask for a pre-auction estimate, show them what you have, tell them what you've got, and see whether they think that the collection together is worth more or whether it should be sold individually. If the answer is sell it individually, you may be able to do just as well on your own. If the answer is we think it's worth more as a collection, then it may need to go to a major auction house and be sold as a complete set.
I had no idea that the frontispiece was going to be behind Mary Queen of Scots.
Right, and did you get Mary Queen of Scots somewhere else?
It was in my mom's basement.
You're kidding. And there's the front of that?
Yeah.
Wow. You were obviously the person meant to find this stuff. Queen of Scots is worth more. There are some condition issues with her, although frankly, because you have this whole other set and she kept that from oxidizing, we're actually glad it happened to her instead.
Yeah.
But there's foxing, there's something laid on it, and it got some tannins from the acids. That's why I took my gloves off, because I'm not going to hurt it any more than it was. And it's got a little tear there. As is, I think she's worth about 50. If she was in great shape, more like 100. If she was Abraham Lincoln from that era, 500 or 600.
These folks didn't want to be on camera, but they did say I could show you this fetish. It's Western African, it is late colonial era, and it should be worth about $50 to $60.
Well, I wanted to show you my view from the appraisal fair because I am up on stage and you can see it is busy out there. In fact, I was solid busy for the first 2 hours and I've just now gotten a break. Published 1782, yeah, so this is really old and it's been color tinted. It looks like it's overall in good shape. My thought about the value on this from the research I've done on similar is probably $250 to $300 potentially. It might be less, but that'd be kind of a top end with this one. Yes, the death of medicine and the response to medicine, it's just wonderful. And the dancing skeleton. This is the sort of thing that, you know, if it was a normal print, if it was just this fellow and another person, it'd be $20 or $30. This brings it into another realm entirely. And again, I think we're looking at $150 to $200 because of the subject matter, and the age is good too. Now this one is I think we determined was a copper plate engraving because it's got the linear aspect to it. Some sort of very strange experimentation is going on there. Again, a very interesting subject matter. All of these are really cool for different reasons. I think that the comparables I saw on that were around $175.
So he was actually killed at Shiloh.
So he was with the Union?
Yes.
The reason I ask is because Southern Indiana and Southern Illinois had sympathies both ways, and so sometimes you cannot assume here that they fought for one side or another. I have family from Missouri, and we literally had the brothers fighting brothers in our family. That is so cool that you got it. Did you have any other images of him?
There's another one that a relative has.
The one that you have that's going to be maybe the more valuable is going to be the one in his regalia with the sword because people like it for that reason. These are daguerreotypes, and it was a silver nitrate deposit, and it was done in a way that they tended to fade out, especially if left in sun, and this one lost its cover, so it probably sat out a lot. But if you hold it at the right angle, you can really see everything. He's got the little star on his lapel and everything. It's just really cool. The value is going to be mostly to you as family. Do you mind me asking what they asked for it?
It seems like I paid $50 for it.
Yeah, I think what you paid was fair for what it is in the condition it's in. But it's so important to family history. Who else should have it? So while I'm thinking of it, please comment in the space below here and also hit the thumbs up button to like this video. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button below. Also hit the bell below to be notified of new videos coming every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And thank you so much for following along. Let's go back to this video.
Now, usually at these appraisal fairs, I'm just talking one-on-one with people, but we do keep some chairs around for other folks, and this one attracted a crowd because this guy had an entire set of coal mine-related magic lantern slides. These were big slides that you could shine a projector through back around 1900 or 1910. In a lot of small towns, that was the closest thing you had to a theater, and then they would be used in commercial uses as well. In this case, the coal mine must have decided that they needed to show how modern their processes were to prospective customers, so they had all these slides made, and they were going to be thrown away. This is another thing that somebody saved from the garbage, and they're worth somewhere in the $10 to $20 each range now, so nice save there.
It does not have an artist that I can attribute to, but it does look a lot like George Cruikshank. It is English in any event. There were other artists doing the same thing in the day. And this was the beginning of satire and parody. These are bishops. These are Anglican bishops. And what's down here, this is a letter that's been written to them by one of the Georges, probably George IV, the last of the regents. And George IV was a little bit nutty, and he did not like the interference from the church. So it basically says, "No proud prelates, I who made you can unmake you." So he's basically threatening them and telling them to settle down and stick to their business. And part of the reason for that is because of the loss of the American Revolutionary War, the English started to question the royalty, and there was a struggle for power. And so that's what this is referring to. This would have been reprinted, and the prints would likely sell in the, oh gosh, $50 to $100 range, but this is the original. And I have to say, I don't know who the artist is. I found comparable watercolors of satire from the era by other artists that could be attributed. They were selling in the $500 to $700 range.
This one I think is really interesting. The cat heads and brains on a chronological lecture.
It really is interesting because it shows his concluding address after he's shown all of this phrenology, and now he's wrapping up, and obviously he's made a big impression on them, and he brought samples, so that was nice. It's really interesting also because just for fun they've added in, which is typical of 19th century moralism, well, there's abstraction and there's suspicion, and we're going to depict some different emotions and things in it. So it tells a bigger story if you look at it. The idea of a lot of these, this is before they had Sunday comics. That didn't happen until the 20th century. So the idea is we're going to do something animated that people can spend a lot of time looking at, and that's why so much detail. And I just think this is wonderful. This is a print. I would think that this would also sell because of subject matter in the maybe 150 to 200 range.
This fellow had the Elvis Presley story, which he bought when that was brand new, but this was done posthumously, and posthumous releases for celebrities generally don't reach the same heights of value that the things made when they were still alive do. I look inside because sometimes they would print certain other advertisements for other albums that make the liners valuable, but this one's a pretty straightforward one worth about $15.
It says 18th century. I was curious to look at that, and I believe that that is correct because it's on more of a vellum, like a parchment. And so that is going to be the right paper for that era. Older paper actually won't yellow because the old paper didn't have any acid in it because it all had to be hand laid. But then the last one here, a scene from the Turnpike Gate. This was an English artist and illustrator, and these would have been done more as humor and satire in the time. This was part of a whole set. And his name was Theodore Lane. He died quite young, so there isn't a lot of his work out there. He had his first exhibition at age 19 and was dead at age 26. But he did do an entire series of these, and they seem to be selling for about $150 each. So you have a great collection. I am so glad that you preserved it. Now the question is, what do I do with it?
Yeah, how can I sell it? Because I'm ready to do that.
Right. Well, I think that's good because there are some things if you were going to keep that I would say, oh, you need to do. Like they probably need to be taken off of these old mats and put on acid-free backing and conserved in a proper manner. Back when these were sold to the hospital back in, what year is that, 1961, people didn't really think about that, and these were around and it's just cute stuff, but these have a lot of acid in them and it is bad for the prints. So since you're selling them, don't worry about it. The next owner can do that. My suggestion is contact those auction houses, show them this first, that's going to whet their appetite, and then also show them, and by the way, I have these other pieces as well. They may say, we can sell the whole lot. I would want them to do these other pieces individually, not as a group with that. This might be as a group and the rest piece by piece. If they say for some reason they're not interested, then the do-it-yourself place is probably eBay. They do seem to sell pretty actively, and it is something you could do yourself. But I just have this feeling that some of these are a lot better than that they need to go to an auction house that can promote it to. A lot of the collectors for these are wealthy doctors who are retired, and they're using them as decoration in a house, or they just think they're fascinating and they're collecting them. And those people, they're not going to eBay to buy things. They're going to a big auction house or some source that knows them, knows what they're looking for, and can say, hey, we have this great thing in our next auction. You should look at this. It's right up your alley.
These folks have a print that was done in France of a French scene, but by an American artist who was black. A lot of American blacks in the art and entertainment industries moved to Paris because they didn't face the same kind of discrimination there. This piece was done in the 1950s and is worth about $100.
But it had to have come from my dad's great aunt. It needs polishing.
Yes, but it is very cute. And tell me what you think it is, and then I'll tell you what I think it
I
is.
thought maybe it was for butter.
Yes.
Put ice in the bottom to keep it cold.
It is absolutely a butter icer, you're correct. Now, soap dishes can look similar, but they wouldn't have the lid and they'd have a lot more holes.
Right.
You put the ice in the bottom, you put the butter here, because butter was done round up until, because it was churned, so it came out that way. And this one, let's see who made it. It is Eureka Silver Company Quadruple Plate. And quadruple plate is a very specific time in silver making. They figured out in the middle 1800s that if they used an electrolysis, they could put those little tiny silver sticks in, and through electrolysis in water, they could zap and the electricity would cause it to adhere to another surface.
Okay.
And so they'd use originally copper and then lesser metals when they figured out how to do it. Well, it was a great idea, except it wore off right away. And this is like 1850s or 60s. So they decided, well, let's leave it in twice as long, and that didn't do any better. So then they did what they called triple plate, and that was about 1870s or 80s, and it seemed like it held on pretty well. And then as people used it over the next 5 or 10 years, it started to wear out really quickly. And they said, well, that's just not suitable. So they said, we're going to do it 4 times as long. Well, that's quadruple plate, and that was the level that finally made it actually
like silver
work.
plate.
It's silver plate. They were so excited that, oh, it really works, that quadruple plate was marked on things from about 1895 to about 1905, and then that just became the standard and they quit saying that.
Okay.
So yours is going to date to right around 1900 exactly. Eureka Silver was kind of a middle line silver company. They weren't as high as a Meriden or one of those, but they were good quality. And it's interesting, the crown, it's sort of a nod to Queen Victoria and all of that, but this piece is actually American. Silver plate is not the easiest sell currently in the market.
It's not.
I honestly think probably $25 to $35 is where the value is now.
All right, well, that's not what I expected. But
Very good.
I like it.
I like it too.
These folks had a very cute Longfellow poetry book. Now, poetry books from the Victorian era are typically not that scarce because it became quite fashionable to have them on your shelves and to show that you were literate. But we always look at the edition and the copyright date in the publisher because some early editions sometimes are more valuable than others. In this case, this is just a sweet book that's probably worth about $10 to $12.
So you have a full set of this.
Yes.
And then this one you said 4, there's just 4 little, okay. Well, these are coasters, and so a set of 4 or 6 or 8 was pretty typical. This is Winterling, and this one's Tischenreuth. Okay, it's 2 different companies. So what you have here, this has a good back stamp. This is the company, Tischenreuth, and then Colwyn is the name of the pattern. So if you ever broke a piece or needed something or said, gee, I'd really like to have the water pitcher, that's what you'd be putting in a Google search, would be Colwyn by Tischenreuth. So that's your pattern name. Germany at the end of the war was split up between Britain, France, and Russia, and of course the Russian part they never gave back, and it became East Germany. Well, eventually they gave it back. So this is going to be after 1949. This is going to be 1946 to 49 only, because they had to mark the zone that it was in, and we controlled the southern part of Germany, which is where all the porcelain factories were. So that's why it says US zone. So this was made only for a 3-year period with that mark, which doesn't necessarily make it more valuable, but there are a small group of collectors to whom that's more interesting, and if they had the choice, they'd buy that before they bought the other one. The good things about these are that they're really stylish and pretty. The negative in today's market is that people live so informally, they're not using this stuff as much as they used to, and the gold rim is sometimes something that people don't like because they want to put it in the dishwasher or the microwave. So for the coasters, that's not such a big deal. For the dinnerware set, it affects the value some. The set of 4 coasters, I would think would retail somewhere in the $30 range for the set of 4. If you were to sell it, like I want to sell it myself, and you put it on eBay, you'd probably expect to get maybe in the $300 range for the set. If you went for insurance value, like I like the set, I want to keep it,
Then we look at replacements limited, because if you broke something and needed it in a hurry, that's who you go to, and they charge a lot. And you're probably looking at an insurance value closer to $750 for the set. So people always say, well, what's the value? You're an appraiser, tell me a number. And I'm like, well, it really depends on what you're doing and what level of the market you're at. There isn't just one number.
She did what a good collector of coins does. She's got them housed well, but she also has the dates and the condition, and that really helps. With American coins, obviously if it's gold, it's going to be worth a lot. If it's silver, it's going to be worth something for silver, but beyond that, it has to do with age, yes, but more condition and rarity, and the rarity depends on where it was made and how many they made that year. So you've got good information there, and that really helps. The values are going to be a lot more now, but her old 1988 values are at least going to give you an idea of the relative value, and she's got that right. So your information here is pretty good. Okay. In the earlier pennies, once they're circulated, it's usually, if it's an S mint, the San Francisco mints are usually the rarest in any given year. 1883 was the first year they did them, and they did them with just the V, and then some people were confused, so then they put 5 cents under it. And it didn't say that at first, so she has the one that doesn't say that, and that's a little shorter production, so it's worth more. There are some semi-key dates in here. They call it a key date if it's really a scarce one that's hard to find, and if you want all of them that they made of that type, that's a key. And then there's semi-key, which is, it's not as rare as that, but it's fairly scarce. The really rare stuff, they know who's got it and where it is. There are 5 1913s of this nickel. They changed over from the Liberty nickel to this in 1913. They weren't sure, so they made 5 of these as a test. And then they decided, nope, we're going to go to the new design, and they were supposed to be destroyed, and someone who worked at the mint grabbed them and took them home with them. Doubtful. I think they know where 4 of those are. Nothing else really rare in here, but again, for silver value, you know, if you're looking at $2 a piece and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 4, you know, you've got, each page is $40. We're getting into some silver dollars. People love these because they love the way they look. These, the base value is around $22 to $24. You have some that are in really nice condition. This is AU, which is almost uncirculated. That's one step above. And that means that it basically sat in a bank or a vault or someone's drawer and didn't get touched much. The scarcest mint overall is CC, which is Carson City. And you don't see those often, and I don't see any in here. The O is New Orleans, and some years they made a lot, some years they didn't. I don't see anything I think is a really rare date, but these ones that are really clean like this likely are going to be in a $45 to $75 range just because they're in such good condition. I've been collecting since I was 6 years old, and yes, you spend a lot of time on it, but it's a lot of fun. So it's going to add up to a good chunk of change. You've got some real money here. You definitely now have an idea at least of what your premiums are.
Have you look at my dollar find here?
The yard sale or something? Because $1 is a cheap price.
St. Vincent's de Paul.
Really? Okay, yeah. Thrifting sometimes pays off if you're in an area with good thrift stores. This is neat.
We do estate sales, and I used to hit a lot of auctions too, you know, but we try not to pick our estate sales that we do.
I'm the same way. When I conduct an estate sale, I leave it for the people because I can go shop somewhere else, and I travel a lot, so I'm going to find something down the road, and I just figure if I take all the good things, why would anyone want to go? As far as good things go, well, these were pretty good. They were from the early 50s. They were reprints of Toulouse-Lautrec paintings, and this woman in red sells for about $35. Well, it was sure good to do an appraisal fair again. It's the first time in a long time, and the first one since I've been doing this channel. So I learned a little bit about camera positioning and sound, so we will continue to perfect those for future videos. I would like to invite you to stay with me after this video and come on over to the Antique Nomad live channel. We have just started this channel because live things are a little different animal than non-live things. And tonight's topic is going to be
in part about appraisals and what they're for and why there's different values for the same item depending on how and where you sell it. So that should be fun and interesting, and we hope you'll join in on the Antique Nomad Live. It is a separate channel. In the meantime, we'll see you back on this channel every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for our regular broadcasts with more adventures from the world of antiquing and vintage. Please check me out on the social media you see below, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.